What's up, musicologist? Welcome to Amari Music Talk, the podcast that is always on the one. I'm Richard Cole, and today I'm going to talk about the Dolby Atmos mix of the legendary Purple Rain album. This is part of the ongoing celebration of the 40th anniversary of this landmark album and film by Prince. But before we dive in, be sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. That way you get updates on future episodes. If you're new to the channel, welcome. If you're a longtime listener, welcome back. Also consider becoming a Patreon supporter and get exclusive bonus material as well as early access to episodes of Amari Music Talk. And be sure to visit the richardcolemusic.com website. Help support Amari Communications by purchasing merchandise such as the brand new We Funk t-shirts. Also, my favorite, the brand new Amari Music Talk t-shirts. Everything is designed here by Amari Communications, and there'll be new stuff coming soon. So visit the website and check it out. And thank you. All right, so if you've seen previous episodes of Amari Music Talk, these last few episodes have been heavily focused on the 40th anniversary of Purple Rain. I know myself and a lot of fans were a little bit mixed on how to feel because there's either been no news or we've got a few things like there it is behind me, the 40th anniversary book by Andrea Swinson. We got news of the Purple Rain movie that's coming out in 4K actually this week as this episode is airing, and I can't wait to get my copy of it. But, with all the drama with the estate, there's no new announcement of a Purple Rain box set. However, this is, as I'm taping this is the weekend of Prince celebration in Minneapolis, Minnesota. There's stuff going on in Paisley Park. There's all kind of different concerts going on, different events, a block party. People were treated to unreleased music and a lot of stuff that I'll talk about, maybe not only on this show, but I'm going to be a guest on somebody's show at some point soon. So stay tuned for that. I'll let you know once that's official. But other than that, so I think the excitement has been building, but I think what solidified it for me was this drop of the Dolby Atmos mix of the Purple Rain album. And I was like, okay, so that, may be a clue that we may get a box set with a remaster of the original album. Who knows? But basically, the long and short of it is this. The new Atmos presentation has been meticulously mixed from the original multi-track master tapes by former Prince engineer and award-winning Atmos engineer Chris James. It is available now via all participating DSPs on June 21st, with an audiophile Blu-ray to be released later in 2024. All right, so now I don't have a big fancy sound bar that has the Dolby Atmos. I've got like a cheap sound bar. It does what it does. It's not half bad for a starter thing. So, but I do have Beats earbuds, and that does allow me access to Dolby Atmos. So I jumped on Apple Music and sought this out and gave it a listen, and I was not prepared for what I was to experience. This was the most amazing thing that I've heard. Now, for those that aren't familiar with Dolby Atmos, it is basically it's a surround sound technology that was developed by Dolby Laboratories, and it expands on existing surround sound systems by adding height channels, allowing sounds to be interpreted as three-dimensional objects and with neither horizontal nor vertical limitations, and mostly used in movie theaters. But over the last few years or so, you can have this technology to enhance your own personal home entertainment system. So again, like I said, hearing this, I'm inspired. So now I gotta save my pennies and hopefully eventually get one of these. And I do have a few things, mostly the Beatles box sets. Some of those do come with a Blu-ray that give you access to 5.1 surround sound, Dolby Atmos as well. Again, you can listen to Purple Rain on streaming, except for Spotify. So as I was making this announcement on X, there were some responses from listeners, saying that they don't, they can't find it on Spotify. Tidal, you will have to search for it. It's not always readily available. So what I've been doing, not only with Purple Rain, but for other albums that have this access, then I just go ahead and save it as a favorites. So that way I can always just go back and access it, because you can't always find it so easily on that artist's page, where their albums are listed. So, but Apple Music, it's a lot easier. You pull it up and it will say, Dolby Atmos or lossless or both or high res or, all three. So, I was able to find it, like I said, listen to it, and was totally blown away by it. So I'm just going to go over a few things that I have, that stood out while listening to this. First and foremost, this sounds like a brand new album. I have had Purple Rain in one way, shape, or form for 40 years. And to varying degrees of listening enjoyment, there were always these consistencies that stayed with me for about 40 years. Minus, say, the 2015 Paisley Park remaster. I've done a number of episodes devoted to that and what I thought its shortcomings were, and also forgiving of the mastering engineer on that, Joshua Welton. Inexperienced. This was probably his first time mastering anything, or let's put it this way, mastering an analog classic like Purple Rain versus even, I have to go back and check the liner notes, but say Artificial Age or Hit and Run Phase One. Those two albums, those dynamics are different than mixing or mastering for an analog classic like Purple Rain. So I gave him a lot of slack on that in that commentary. But for the last 40 years listening to it compared to this Dolby Atmos, it's night and day. It sounds like a brand new album. It sounds like, if Prince had followed through on his plan to redo the albums, which is something that, an idea that Taylor Swift, not that she stole the idea per se, but has successfully executed in re-recording or repackaging or representing her classic albums, since she doesn't own the masters to her classic period. If Prince had followed through on that idea way back in, the 90s or the early 2000s, I think, the 1999 master aside, I always imagined, this is what I had always imagined it sounding like. Like, it's the album, but it's different. And like I said, with what Taylor Swift is doing, it's new. It sounds new to me. Just the 3D aspect, it brings out the layered vocals. It brings out the various instruments. A lot of items that have been just buried in the mix. Like it, you know, you don't notice it's there unless you have a really sophisticated sound system or have had one in the 80s or whenever. Or, even with the advent of the CD, like Prince's catalog was in dire need of a remaster just because the sound quality was so low. So even if you were listening to it on CD, there's still a lot of these things you wouldn't have picked up on that maybe you should have picked up on if the quality was better. But I mean, just the minute the beats from Let's Go Crazy kick in, and then the build up to the rest of the instruments in the arrangement, right as you're going into the first verse, man, like I said, it right away, it felt like a brand new album. I was hearing Let's Go Crazy in a way that I have never heard it in, even with the 12-inch version that's on the deluxe edition from 2017. Even from the version that's the long version that's on Prince Ultimate. Even with that clarity, I wasn't hearing these things in those mixes at all. So that 3D aspect of Dolby Atmos, as you're hearing things, the range is wider. Like I said, the instruments, some of the vocals are separated, and you're just hearing all these things that are coming at you. So those nuances can be surprising to your ears when you're listening to it. And again, because we've been so conditioned to hearing this album a certain way, as you're listening, you can hear a guitar part. You can hear a synth line, or a counter vocal, that you've never heard before. It'll just pop up out of nowhere, but it adds to the songs. It doesn't distract you or take away from it, but it is kind of jarring because you're so used to hearing it. But it adds so much depth. It adds so much beauty to the tracks, whether it's rock, whether it's funk, whether it's the ballads. It adds so much depth throughout that album that it's just like you're taking, if Purple Rain was a dimension unto itself, those nuances would bring it would be like going into another dimension in a way. Like I said, it adds to the songs, but it doesn't distract you from it. Probably one of the biggest examples, it's the guitar riff in I Would Die For You. That riff, you hear that riff when they're doing it live, when you have that moment in the Purple Rain tour where it's the Revolution, it's Sheila E.'s band, and they come out and they do I Would Die For You, and that sort of breakdown or that instrumental build up, when he's cueing the percussions, when he's cueing the guitars, and you hear that riff, you hear it in I Would Die For You. It's something that I have never heard in the original album at all. And because it's so buried within the mix, that it's like, it's like, oh, cool, that part's in there. And it was there the whole time. I always thought that it was just something that was just added for the, to accent the live aspect of that performance, whether it was the 12-inch single, whether you've seen it on the Syracuse video or any Purple Rain footage of that tour that you might have seen, in, whether it's different bootlegs or whatever. But yeah, that was mind-blowing. I can't remember which song it was, but there was like a vocal harmony that just stood on the left side of that speaker that I don't know if it was When Doves Cry or I can't remember, but it was just like this and it was just like, whoa, but again, like I said, it's not a distracting thing. It doesn't take you out of the song. It's just like, man, that part was in there the whole time. and you're just so blown away by the depth of it. Another thing that stands out for me is the deepness in the bass tones, mostly the Linn drum kicks in that. One of my favorite things about this particular era, and I think maybe starting with Gotta Stop Messing Around, the B side from Let's Work, starting with that all the way through Purple Rain, is the deepness. Because I used to have this Panasonic component set back in the day, and the speakers were pretty decent. It wasn't like the most top of the line model, but like I said, it was decent, and you balanced the bass and the treble just the right way. If you put on something like I said, Gotta Stop Messing About, or whatever stuff from 1999, and especially everything from Purple Rain, that deepness that you hear, that deepness from the bass, from the Oberheims, and the deepness of the kick drum on that Linn drum machine, it's a punch. It's like very pre 808 kick drum. This was the deepest that anyone would get with any one of those instruments in those days. But yeah, definitely like the beautiful ones, Computer Blue, Baby I'm a Star. Those songs to me have been restored for bringing back that feeling. Don't you miss the feeling the music gave you back in the day? That this Dolby Atmos, as far as Purple Rain, has completely restored it, and not only restored it, enhanced it. And that deepness, that's the thing that's missing from the Joshua Welton remaster from 2015. If you remember that review, there were some songs that if you listen to it in the car, you can kind of feel it. You kind of get that feeling from that. Depending on what type of system that you have, you can hear it that way. But the Dolby Atmos remix of this album, like I said, it's all there. So if there's no, oh, listen to it here, listen to it there. So long as you have a really good system, or if you've got Dolby Atmos compatible, like if you want to get like something like the Beats for studio listening, or just their regular set, like I've got, you'll have access to that. So if you pull up Apple Music, or if you're Bluetoothing it through whatever device you're Bluetoothing those earbuds to, then you will hear it, and it will be consistent. There was not one song on this that was, lacking, or I felt like it. There's a few things like the tom fills in Take Me With You. Those seem to be a little bit less prominent in the mix to me. Like I said, I have to go back and listen to that one again. But if there was one takeaway, that would be it for me. But again, I have to go back and listen. When Doves Cry, in a way, but what makes up for it are the other nuances, again, from the instruments, from the layered vocals, like the background vocals and things. Those make up for that lack of depth that you're used to hearing it. But again, it's still definitely an amazing experience. So overall, this Dolby Atmos mix of the Purple Rain album is probably going to be my definitive way of listening to that album. Now, should we get, and I'm hoping we are, it should be a definite, it may just be later this summer, it could be later this year, in which we may get a box set of the Purple Rain album with vault tracks and Blu-ray and things like that. And I'm sure there will definitely be a mandate to at least remaster the original album. So it'll be remastered. I'm hoping that they would just, if they remix it as close to the way the Dolby Atmos sounds, if they do a remix and just not just a regular remaster of it. But barring those things, yeah, I would probably still listen to whether it's a remaster or a remix of the original Purple Rain album if that's released on vinyl, CD, box set of both. I would still listen to that. But I think my go to method is going to be this Dolby Atmos remix of this album. So, what do you think? Have you had a chance to hear it? Do you have access to listen to it in Dolby Atmos? Like I said, a good set of earbuds. You have a decent soundbar system or home entertainment system that you can listen to it. Definitely check it out. Listen to it. Leave me a comment and let me know your thoughts. And that is going to end this episode of Amari Music Talk. Thank you once again for tuning in. Again, hit like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're on YouTube, become a Patreon supporter. If you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, definitely be sure to download and listen. And until then, create your day, create your life. Peace.